Started. Welcome everybody to our Friday Flock Fridays. Today we've got Dr. Daniel Batista with Zoetis is going to be speaking with us. He's got a lot of great experience. Before he went to Zoetis, Dr. Batista was the state diagnostic lab veterinarian for the University of Delaware. And so I've known Dan for well over a decade now, and he's been a great asset to small flock growers everywhere. And today he's going to kind of talk about diseases, some common poultry diseases and how to prevent them and what you can do. Dr. Batista?
Thank you very much, John, and thank you for University of Maryland. I always look forward to talk to stakeholders, whether they be in the commercial sector or on the private sector as well. There's always something to be learned about your experiences. So this is just not me talking. I'd love to hear some feedback and some experiences as well. All right, so this is well, let's talk about the HiPath AI because it just takes up so much oxygen. But this phrase right here probably applies more to commercial farmers than anything else. We have never been in this situation. HiPath AI is has put us in a situation where we're seeing almost $11 per dozen their dozen eggs. We've never been here before. And also on the broiler sector, we're seeing some catastrophic mortalities that we haven't seen in Delmarva. Anyway, here's some of the breakdowns of type of flocks that has been affected this past few years. I have a 2022, 2023. Really, our outbreak in 2025 is really a continuum of this HiPath AI that came through in 2018, 2019, coming from Europe, and wild waterfowl brought it into North America, and has moved on to infect the commercial and backyard flocks as well. But as you can see over here, I mean, 58% of the cases in 2022-23 were backyard flocks. 2025 is still early to tell. I mean, but it shouldn't be any different. You've seen it on the news, right? I mean, even mammals and even wildlife. Like, I mean, who swabs puma anyway? But they found it in some of those wildlife as well. So it's upon us. It's winter time's here, and there's a lot of those wild waterfowl that really are the origin of this HiPath AI. And unfortunately, the open access that backyard flocks have puts them at a special risk for this disease. All right, mortality, you can see in the layers and pullets comprise of all the mortalities, and that's because these birds are raised in large numbers. So it's not unusual for one commercial egg layer facility to have 1 to 2 million birds. So when that gets hit, it's an all or none situation. Avian influenza follows the annual waterfowl migration. You can see that the cases have topped in the spring and fall in previous years. And our cases started off in January 3. That was preceded by some wild waterfowl die-offs in, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Prime Hook, somewhere near some of the wild waterfowl refuges. All right, so how do you know if you have avian influenza? I'm not going into too much detail, but basically on the commercial sector, if you find that the birds are smiling at you at 11 o'clock and at 3 o'clock, let's say, half of the birds are dead, you better be thinking about HiPath AI on top of that. A lot of dead birds in a short period of time, just because this virus is so hot, it just kills birds. There's no time for the birds to just be sniffling and that sort of thing. They just rips right through them birds, especially turkeys. All right. Scientifically, we have low path or mild avian influenza, most of what we see in mallard ducks naturally carry avian influenza. Not all of those would kill birds. A lot of those are low path, but this certain nature sometimes rolls the dice and gives us a curveball, and we have highly pathogenic AI. It's almost like, I mean, off the cuff right here. Some of the social sciences professor would say one out of 30,000 people is a sociopath or, a violent sociopath. Same thing with viruses and bacteria. There's always one that just wants to stick out. So you can see there, that chicken right there has got a purple comb because avian influenza really attacks the whole system of the body, circulatory and respiratory. Okay, so these are actual pictures. One over here is in Italy, just a lot of dead chickens, and that would not be unlike what you will see in a broiler farm that has had high path AI. These are battery cages with layer hens in the Midwest. And you can see just a lot of death and destruction. Yeah, I mentioned that this story right here with high path AI has been an ongoing saga. It's been documented that in 2015 there was a large migration of movement of this virus being carried into from the Europe. It really came from Asia. It's always been there, but the virus stopped killing migratory waterfowl. So dead migratory waterfowls do not migrate, but if the virus is hitchhiking into wild waterfowl, they go places. As you can see, the Bering Strait and Greenland is a stopover. By the time they get to Greenland, it's easy enough to get to Canada and onto North America and South America. We know that because we can follow the genetic code. This bird, it's called CLAN or CLAD 2.3.4.4, and it's still 2.3.4.4 in 2025, but it has different subgroups now. Some of the subgroups can be identified only in dairy cattle. So that's called 2.3.4.4, 3.13. All right, so again, it all starts with the mallard ducks, whatever flu it is, human flu, horse flu, canine flu, dog flu, it all starts with this mallard. And then some of them just jump into other things. So from a public health perspective, we're a little bit more nervous when it starts jumping into animals that share common receptors with humans. So the usual storyline from the public health folks is that when it starts jumping into pigs and mammals, we share a lot of those common receptors, then humans better watch out. Of course, you can see the turkeys right here. They just are especially susceptible to that. And don't ask me how a whale gets gets avian influenza, but somehow it's all tied into that. So, the flu virus doesn't have an agenda. All it wants is just to replicate, wants to survive, and it will look for a best fit scenario where it can find a host, so it can reproduce and live on. That's all it is. All right, so on the commercial sector, we live in Delmarva, thousands of years. The waterfowl has been here, so I don't think the waterfowl should adjust. I think humans should adjust. And therefore, knowing that they're in a migratory waterfowl stopover, the ag industry, the poultry industry should practice biosecurity. I'm not after shooting thousands of waterfowl, but I am all for cleaning up feed, spilled feed, and all this. Anything that would attract waterfowl close to the premises should be addressed. How does disease spread? It applies to high path AI, applies to every disease that we find. You can actually walk it in. Some scientists did some work a few decades ago that a dime-sized pellet of manure or a blob of manure has billions of virus particles in there that can infect a lot of birds. And so, I like this phrase, beware of the evil that lurks in the souls of men, underneath the souls. That's where the battle between success and failure happens. So, footwear is really important. That's the reason why in some of these cases you can find those sick and dead birds near the entrances. That kind of indicates that it was walked in. And of course, blow-in is another one, especially in some other diseases where uh, we learn to live with certain diseases. We don't destroy the birds, so those birds get transported and move all over the country, at least in the region. Okay, and a stay in if you have the same disease and it keeps happening. Look for areas where it's moist, cold, and moist, cold, and wet. It's almost like plants or other animals. They would like to be in a comfortable environment, and that's the comfort zone for some of these viruses. So it's good to always clean and disinfect. And I won't go into too much detail, but there's a difference between cleaning and disinfecting because you cannot disinfect dirt. Clean the dirt first and then disinfect because the disinfectant, a lot of them gets neutralized by organic material. All right, so we went through that one right here. I got a little glitch here. Let me see, it won't advance. All right, here we go. So, taking a page from a breeder flock. So the most biosecure place in a commercial broiler facility or a broiler industry is the breeders because these are precious breeders laying tens of thousands of eggs. So which means if there is a good example of biosecurity, it will be in a breeder flock. We don't have breeder flocks for the most part here in Delmarva. We want to keep them separate. So most of these are in the Carolinas. You can see this individual right here, sitting on a chair, and so there's that white square box in there. That's the clean line. So he puts the boots, the new boots, the outer boots, inside the white line, and then as a further precaution, he would step on chlorine bleach in there. Remember that the soles, the footwear is where it's at. All right. So anyway, we talked about high-path AI. Let's talk about the other things that are not high-path AI, but what can happen to backyard flocks. So if you find birds that have eyes that are football shape instead of the round shape, eyelids at least, and it's weeping, and birds are crowing like they have some blockage in their windpipe, it could be infectious laryngotracheitis. It's also positive in the commercial flocks, but since this is a herpes virus, it persists in long-lived birds, and broilers don't live that long enough. They may get infected, but they all get hauled into the processing plant, so that stops that cycle of the disease. This is a herpes virus, it's almost like high school, right? What your teacher kind of told you, like love is temporary, herpes is forever. So you got herpes simplex, you got herpes that causes shingles and all that stuff. So, we recover from some of these herpes viruses. It just takes stress to kind of pull them out and kind of rear up its ugly head. So there really is no good eradication method other than starting all over again in the commercial sector. Of course, we have a vaccine for it if we have to. The good news about infectious laryngotracheitis, it doesn't make people sick, so it's not a food safety issue. So we don't depopulate based on infectious laryngotracheitis. All right. So this is what it looks like. The eyes are weepy. You don't usually pick apart the bird, but I do, right? So the reason why it's growing is look at that blood phlegm in the windpipe. All right. So another one is mycoplasmosis, chronic respiratory disease. It's when they say chronic, it's when it infects the bird, it never leaves the bird, and that's true for Mycoplasma. We call it MG. Mycoplasma is also a different species of mycoplasma in humans, in pigs, in cattle. What characterizes mycoplasma or this family is that it's the ease of spread, and recovered birds remain carriers for life. So, from a breeder perspective, if you're truly a serious breeder, you don't want to take in birds from just, you know, auction markets and all that stuff. You might find a nice bird, but you're risking bringing that bird. Usually, older birds have a high rate of positivity for mycoplasma. It may look good, but when it gets stressed out during winter, it might start coughing and then infect most of your birds. So I guess what I'm saying here, if you're serious about biosecurity, start from chicks. They have less likelihood of being positive for mycoplasmosis. All right. So look at the eyes right there. It's got that really, uh, a lot of this mucus. It comes out right here, and that's the reason why these birds cough up a whole lot, and then they just waste away. They don't really, they stop producing eggs. They don't gain weight. They just what we call ain't doing right, ADR. Right. So this is the air sac right here. It's almost like somebody having bad lungs, bad pneumonia. They just waste away. Right. So this is what we see. Turkeys will have the swollen head or swollen face. Now, it's not all, Bautista is saying we can't do much about it. What we have done in the commercial sector and certain parts of the uh, private industry or smallholder flocks, they were able to dip their hatching eggs in antibiotic solution, especially when you got valuable stock that you don't want to do away with that genetic line. This is an option. Of course, putting them in solutions like this would affect the fertility, but decreased fertility is better than zero fertility if you kill off the flock, right? Yeah, it's not for everybody, but for certain cases where you got valuable genetic lines, this is something that you might want to do. All right, so like I said, what can we do? Purchase chicks from MG negative sources. Then we got the National Poultry Improvement Plan participants. If you go to some of these bigger hatcheries, they are by definition probably almost always an NPIP participant. So go for some of those reputable sources. Okay, antibiotics would cure the symptoms or what we call clinical signs, but it doesn't really eradicate MG. So the birds, when they are cold and sick, they get sick again, and then they start infecting other birds. So that's the reason why it's called chronic respiratory disease. Okay. Easier said than done. Don't mix birds of different species and age because I recognize the appeal for this. I mean, if I were a backyard flock grower too, I would get a menagerie of different species. That's part of the joy of having these birds. But the older birds tend to have recovered from certain diseases that younger birds might be infected. But if you're here in the commercial sector, we're talking about 200,000 chickens. We have a different mindset. We just want to be all in, all out. All right. In most cases, as working as 18 years as a veterinary, a chicken doctor, I've seen a lot of cases here in Delmarva where backyard flocks are positive not just for one disease, but multiple diseases. So in this case right here, you got this roosters right here positive for coryza, they're positive for MG, they're positive for MS, they're positive for LT based on some of this DNA test. This layer bird over here, this leghorn, was positive for 3 diseases as well. So I don't want you to have a master's degree in respiratory diseases. All I want you to impress on you is these diseases are out there. A lot of them could be chronic. They could infect susceptible younger birds. But if you lose or have sick birds, feel free to contact your local diagnostic lab, or if you lose a certain number of birds, call the state veterinarian. Maryland and Delaware certainly give free diagnostic tests to backyard birds. so that we have a better picture where it's at with some of these important diseases. All right. So yeah, we understand that there's joy and fulfillment in raising birds. We have different motivations for it. Like some of these birds, they might be infected with certain diseases, but that doesn't mean that you have to depopulate those birds. As much as I might be sniffling from one disease, I don't expect my wife to get rid of me, right? So some of these chickens are really family, you know. So bottom line is, if you are a backyard flock enthusiast, have nothing to do with commercial chickens. Now, if you're commercial chicken growers, I definitely would expect you not to have anything to do with backyard birds. Live and let live, right? All right. So yeah. Certainly coryza out there. We can test for it. It's out there in our region. And let's talk about Marek's disease. When you see birds, this is a very nice silky right here. What's wrong with it? It's just losing its ability to walk. So it's hind limb paralysis. You can see the wings supporting the legs right there. So when you see this, chances are it's probably Marek's disease. Marek's disease is another herpes virus, but it attacks the brain and the nerves. And in certain cases, certain types of Marek's disease would cause chicken cancer. So that's fairly common in backyard birds. In the commercial sector, we vaccinate for this disease, and it's fairly effective. It's a subcutaneous vaccine. In backyard birds, probably the easiest for you is just to get your chicks from hatcheries that provide Marek's disease vaccination for additional fee. It's just much easier, just because this vaccine comes in several thousand bird doses. They're not that expensive, but if you're using it for 400, 500, you just can't put that back into the refrigerator and hope that it will work 2 weeks from now. It's once you rehydrate it, you have to use it. You have to keep it cold and get rid of it after you're done. So you're better off letting the hatcheries do it. Obviously, from an economic standpoint, it really was made for high volume vaccination, and that occurs in a commercial hatchery. But it's out there. Certain practitioners would probably provide this vaccine for you if you have some really valuable stock. Okay. All right. Briefly, just going through stuff other than viruses. One of the more common things that affects backyard birds is also worms, right? So you can see there's not a whole lot of breast muscle into that heavily parasitized bird over there. So now I don't expect you to be opening up birds, but you can certainly look at their manure, right? So goose poop would look like green because they eat a lot of grass, but on the far right there would be a normal dropping from a normal hen. So it's fully formed. The white cap is basically, that's the uric acid. Yeah, that's the solid form of urine. All right, when you don't see that fully formed manure, but you see blood, or you can see some of these different forms of diarrhea right here, that's not normal. So you have to be thinking about what are those things, okay? I will not go through much of this, but blood equals coccidiosis, the most common parasite. Not going to talk about it because you will learn more about it in depth with another speaker in the next 2 weeks. Okay, roundworms, very common. You can see the eggs over there. Rarely does it get to the form where it just blocks the intestines, but sometimes it does, and that's where it kills birds. Normally, just robs the birds from nutrition. All of the common dewormers out there would take care of roundworms, and certainly there's some natural dewormers out there too that can help control worms as well. All right, capillaria is called thread worms. You can see how thread-like they are. Now, for those of you that are raising guinea fowls are almost bulletproof. They would just shrug off most diseases, including roundworms. But the one there that I found that they're a little bit more susceptible to is this threadworms. So just keep an eye out for that one. Again, certain um, dewormers can control capillary as well. All right, tapeworms. Birds get tapeworms because they peck on flies or earthworms. Those are basically vectors for tapeworms. Tapeworms usually are not big killers in chickens. They are there. They suck up some of the nutrients, but they're not severe enough usually to kill birds. That's probably roundworms more than tapeworms, but they're there. All right. So again, don't underestimate good management. Certainly, I recognize that some of the medications that have been available to you in the past few years, some of them are no longer there. But thank God we still have medicated feed for cocci, because cocci really is the big gorilla in the room when you talk about gut diseases. And just build networks with your poultry professionals, whether they're in the extension. Extension plays a really valuable role in bridging the gap between some of these agencies. So, please maintain that relationship. All right. I thought I saw some questions, but I will let the moderator, Megan or John, to field those questions to me. In this case, I would stop now and get ready for some questions if you have any.
All right, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. So the first question is, and this is one we hear quite often, are there vaccines available for high path avian influenza?
In Europe, yes. In the US, we have some, but we're still deliberating at the government level whether we want to build a stockpile again like what we did in 2015. There's some push and pull between sectors. Let me be honest with you. The broilers do not want vaccination as an option because they feel like that would limit exports. Probably around 10 to 15% of all chickens, meat chickens, are exported outside of the United States. And so, but as you can tell, if you are into the egg laying business, 10.95 per dozen. We've never been there before. And so the layer folks and the breeders, they're saying, hey, look, we need this tool, and possibly valuable breeders as well that may not be in a large scale. But then again, these are things that are being worked out right now. For example, my company, Zoetis, prepared a vaccine that was given to some endangered species like the American condor. So it's possible. The only downside to vaccination, if you're eradicating, is the vaccine would prevent severe disease and death in, for example, chickens, but the birds can still get infected. So you got a scenario, you can just look at from a state veterinarian perspective or the federal government. Vaccinated birds will harbor the virus. It's hard to detect them. So how can you eradicate something you can't detect? So normally the easiest way to detect high path AI right now is just to wait for birds to be dying in bunches. Then you come in. So there's really no easy, neat answers. Like in life, there's always shades of gray. I can understand the concerns, but right now it's not readily available yet.
Right. So in short form is, yes, there is the possibility of a vaccine, but there's not one currently available for use because it's prohibited by the government at this point.
Bingo.
That the way to say it? All right. Thanks.
Perfect.
What about, you mentioned Marek's disease earlier. When should birds be vaccinated for Marek's disease? How early in their life?
As early as possible, because Marek's vaccine is out there. So theoretically, in the commercial sector, we vaccinate eggs before they even get hatched. We have this Innovo machine, they call it Innovo machine, and they get vaccinated at 18 and a half days. Of course, that doesn't apply to backyard flocks. So this vaccine can be given day old in under the neck fold, the scruff of the neck. Yeah,
Subcutaneous.
subcutaneous. That is correct.
So are there other vaccines that are available? Are there vaccines? What vaccines would be available for a small farmer?
Um, so other than Marek's vaccine, really the other ones are really hard to get uh hold of unless you're really working with a really dedicated poultry veterinarian. And there's not a whole lot of them around. So you got Mycoplasma, you can certainly get that through a veterinarian. They come in like, I don't know, 5 to 10,000 doses and they're injectable. So you got to work out a way where, it works for the veterinarian and it works for you. But then again, just a word of warning, if you're serious about eradicating, you shouldn't be using vaccine as the only tool. But if you're in a situation where, like, look, I mean, it's out there, I don't want to lose this stock, that might be an option.
Thanks. Are there any other questions, folks? If you have any questions, please put them in there. I don't see any more at the moment. But again, we just want to remind everybody at this time that, biosecurity is your best bet to prevent any disease. And by doing that, basically some simple things as Dan went over. We want to make sure that we don't take our outside clothes inside with our chickens, have dedicated footwear or shoe covers when you go in and deal with your chickens. Or if you're a small flock and you design it properly, you can actually collect your eggs, feed, and water without ever going in amongst your chickens, which is actually a really easy way to do things. So think biosecurity when you're doing it. If you go to the feed store, don't just go straight down to your chickens, because if you think about it, the feed store is where everybody else is at. And so you don't want to take what you pick up there straight down to your birds. So think about what we're doing, and let's keep it all safe here. The
That's a
next
great,
question.
yeah,
What?
that's a great summary.
Why are backyard flocks getting HPI more than other groups?
Because they're out there in the wild, or they're out there outside. And the source of the HiPath AI is just the Canadian Air Force flying all over our rooftops, and then they would just poop out the HiPath AI. So,
Exactly. It goes down to biosecurity. The reasons farmers have their birds inside is to prevent disease. And I know it's really fun to let our chickens out, and it's great to see them out in the sunshine, and they're beautiful and they're enjoying the yard. But at this time of year with the geese and everything present, they're not getting any bugs. There's really nothing for them to eat. All we're doing is really exposing them to the threat of disease.
so some follow-up questions to say, if we have a covered run, yeah, you're relatively safer, but
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
actually a great idea at this time of year. Or they can get outside, they can get some fresh air, but they're not going to have any poop falling on top of them. That's actually pretty good.
but don't forget footwear. I mean, if you got a dedicated footwear, assume that when you're just walking around the yard, that you might be stepping on some goose poop. You wouldn't know about it. So, which means have a good dedicated footwear when you're getting into your flocks. I mean, that's a
Absolutely.
proven method. Yeah.
Yeah, really
And the rest is gravy.
yeah, the biggest things we're seeing is tracking it on your shoes, your feet, your hands. The other one that people don't think about is you need to clean your cell phone every once in a while. Think about when was the last
Right.
time you cleaned your cell phone? It goes with you everywhere and you touch it all day long and you hold it up next to your face. So clean your cell phones occasionally.
Right. Hey, John, talk about briefly about line of separation, you know.
Yeah, that's probably something we should do. So what we call it a line of separation is the on one side of the line we consider a clean area, and the other side of the line we consider, well, we usually have a buffer or a dirty area. So when you're looking at your chicken coop, consider the line of separation, the area around your chicken coop. So nothing from outside goes in. For example, shoes. If you need to go in with there, you change your shoes or you put on a shoe cover. And likewise, we don't want to bring things out and track other places as well. So our line of separation needs to be around our coop and that area right there. Uh,
Thank you. Anything else?
shoebox. Let's see, what's that say? Shoebox outside the run or coop. Um, I would say, yeah, keep your shoes, keep a set of shoes there. You can put them in a box. If you have a room, you can change in before you go in, like we do in our commercial ones. But again, like I said, I love my daughter's setup and her chicken house. I mean, she can feed, water, and collect her eggs without ever stepping inside. She just reaches in and takes care of it. So that's one of the easiest ways to do it. But Yeah, keep some separate shoes there or shoe covers. And if you do use shoe covers, don't let them blow away. Make sure you put them in the garbage right away because remember, they've been in contact with manure, so we don't want them to spread disease elsewhere. Any
Agreed.
other methods of reducing cocci or coryza? I incinerate manure, but my property has a contaminating. My property vet is my poultry vet has me on routine for coryza, treating every 3 months.
Don't incinerate manure. Just put him in a place. I mean, the composting would actually kill it. Yeah. And for respiratory disease, including coryza, it's usually your hands and your feet. And, I mean, if you're not touching other susceptible flocks, whether that's yours or somebody else's, it will stay put.
Yeah. The next one is about the season. What would be a safer time to let our birds run free?
Summer.
Yeah. And the thing, look around. If
Spring.
you don't have waterfowl first off is check the waterfowl. If you live next to a place with a lot of waterfowl, you may never be safe to let them free. So particularly make sure that there's no waterfowl around when you're letting your birds roam.
Right. Don't mix them with even the resident geese and all that stuff. Bad idea.
Let's see. I don't see any other questions at this time. We want to thank everybody again for being here. Uh, let's see. We'll be back in next week. And next week, we're going to do Poultry 911. We'll talk about some of the simple things you see and ways you can take care of them simply on your own. Yes, for major things, we always encourage everybody to get a veterinarian. Again, thanks everybody for joining us. A special thanks to Dr. Dan Batista for being with us today. And everybody have a great day.